You learn a lot about people in a short period of time. So from that, that's when I made the suggestion. Here's who you should be calling, and the rest is history.
The conversation that Matthew and I have is literally the same exact day that Ryan and I are sitting down at the birthday party.
I vividly remember that my response to you was, well, show me somebody that hasn't had any struggles.
Welcome to When You Look, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide, was it coincidence or God? Gentlemen, welcome to When You Look. Pumped to have you boys on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Well, guys.
Yeah, awesome. This is a super, super unique story because we've got a lot of moving pieces in this one in particular. And we get to see a lot of things play out that a lot of times folks in certain stories don't really get to see all of the dots connected. So I'm really excited to be able to kind of talk this through with all of you guys, particularly because I also happen to be kind of directly involved in all of it. But before we get into all of that, let's get to know each other and our audience have the opportunity to get to know all of us. So Butch, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Mick. My name is Butch Brookshire. I currently live in Texas. Recently moved from a lifetime of living in Virginia. I've never lived anywhere else. So here I am, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, 100%, man. Thanks a bunch for being on the show. Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Matthew Comby, live in Virginia, work for a local fire department, and recently, within the last 2 years, started a franchise called Red Line Gear Cleaning, where we go to fire departments all over the state and help clean and repair their gear that they have. So that is how I have been connected within this story, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, we are pumped to have you. Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I'm Ryan. I grew up in Hanover, and I currently work for Matt. Not a whole lot to say.
Yeah, awesome. Well, listen, guys, we are super excited to be able to kind of talk through all of this because it's a really interesting and unique way in which what Ryan just talked about is that how he ends up coming to work for Matt. So everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching, you got a little bit of an idea here about how this particular arc is going to land, but there's so much really cool stuff along the way. So let's just start to jump into that because I was directly involved in a lot of this story as well. And so, Butch, you and I got connected through a mutual friend by the name of Rick. And the backstory on all of that is I had launched a consulting business in 2020, and it was really falling apart. And it was totally God's design that it was falling apart. But at the time, it absolutely did not feel like that. And Rick and I had become colleagues, even though he worked at a different business. But we were very much peers in one of the spaces that I consulted in. And I ended up talking to Rick about how the business was not working. And Rick said to me, he goes, "You should have lunch with my buddy Butch." And Butch, you and I had sort of like seen each other over the years. I had heard your name, but we otherwise essentially had absolutely no connection. And you and I sat down for lunch in late 2021. And what my intention was for that lunch was exclusively to help you, because as it had been framed to me from Rick, you had recently transitioned to a new employer. And so as a business guy, as a sales guy, I'm like, okay, great. Rick suggests we get together. And I'm immediately thinking, what kind of value can I add to Butch? And so I'm like, okay, well, I've got a network. Sure, Butch is a seasoned sales professional, but he's in a new space because you went from kind of a payroll world and human capital management over to staffing. And so I'm thinking, going into this lunch, I'm thinking perhaps there's someone or something in my network that I can utilize to help add value to Butch. that was 100% my intention for you and I having lunch together. So we sit down then for lunch, and as I recall it, again, want you to be able to weigh in on all of this here in 1 second. As I recall it, that's really largely what we talked about up until basically the end, when you mentioned something to me. But before we talk about what you exactly mentioned, why don't we just give us your recollection of that lunch?
Of course. So we have a mutual friend, as you've indicated, in Rick Collins, and Rick is always trying. I use the term the art of the deal, but let's talk about it from a different perspective, the art of the network and the art of the relationships. And he's always shared with me, you should talk to this person. I've routinely talked to Rick about my life. So we're always looking to explore where we can bring benefit, not just to each other, not just to ourselves, but to others. And of course, he suggested that you and I connect. And as we go backwards, you and I both were in the kind of the payroll human capital management world, and we had some interests that were mutually beneficial, if you may. And so we just sat down and chatted, got to know one another. And through that conversation, I really picked up on the fact that you had a lot of experience and you were certainly classic in terms of your sales and sales training. And I knew of an opening that was available in the company I'd recently joined. It's not unusual for me to do this. I've helped several people move from companies to companies or help them find jobs. Just what I think is important for us to do to help one another. And without knowing anything about your prior situation, I said, I know of something here in our company. And my initial sort of response with the company had been very positive, the implementation, the vision, the leadership. And I thought, without knowing anything else, you'd be a great fit for our organization. Not in my group, but in another more senior level group in enterprise selling. So that's really my ability to connect you was out of the connection and the trust that I felt that we were able to build during that lunchtime. And, you read the room, if you may, and you learn a lot about people in a short period of time. So from that's when I made the suggestion. Here's who you should be calling, and the rest is history, if we may.
Yeah.
But that's how it all came around.
Yeah, well, we're gonna explore that history that you just talked about a little bit more, but here's what's really wild when you ask me about all this. So we all just heard how Butch described it, okay? Butch has no awareness of the backstory that I'm about to give. My wife and I had basically realized that my consulting business needed to come to an end. And this is December of 2021. And so literal days before Butch and I sit down for lunch. And as we talked about, my intention, help Butch out. Butch has no awareness of any of this. My wife and I are on our knees, basically saying to God, okay, the business has failed. We need you. I entered into that business without his direction and his guidance, and I had to repent, and that's why we were on our knees. And so days before Butch and I sit down for lunch, I'm basically crying out and repenting and asking him to provide a job. But this isn't public. Nobody knows this. So days later, after that prayer, Butch and I are sitting down, and I can't overstate this enough. I mean, we've never even talked about any of that. And out of nowhere, he suggests this particular, like he described, enterprise level sales position. And I told Butch, thanks for letting me know I'm not in the job market, which was technically true because I hadn't yet started looking for work. But also very much a lie in that we were very hopeful that I was going to find a job, but I had truly not actually started looking for work. And it was my strategy going into the conversation that I was never even thinking about me. And then it was my pride that couldn't say to Butch right out of the gates, yeah, I'm interested in that. So I go home, I look up the position, and I'm like, this looks really interesting. I could totally do this work. Like, this looks like it's absolutely aligned. So we prayed about it. I swallowed my pride. I called Butch. I think I called you that following Monday, and I think it was a Thursday or a Friday. I actually think it was a Friday that we had that lunch. And I called you the following Monday, and I was like, hey, I know I told you I wasn't interested in that job. Now I'm interested. And tell everybody what your response was.
Well, actually, I was surprised, if I remember correctly, because you played it as a blank wall when I told you about this job. And my read on you was, no, he's really not interested. Because when I think people are looking for jobs and I share it with them, I'm looking for a different level of emotion. And you played it very close to the vest. And when you called me and let me know, I mean, I was shocked, if you may. Happy to hear about it because I thought you were a really great fit for the company. But it was surprising, and it was a good surprise, though, that we were able to start this journey of helping you get a job. So
Yeah.
we're good at keeping it quiet when we met, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for adding all of that color there. So kind of here's how it flowed. Butch is like, okay, I'll have the recruiter call you. And that's literally what happened. I think the following business day, the recruiter called me, and 4 interviews later, and we'll call it about a month, I started working for PeopleShare. And that was February of 2022. So again, we all have a kind of this idea of how this arc lands. So then it's like, okay, well, what does Mick and Butch having lunch and Mick getting this job have anything to do with Ryan working for Matthew? Well, this is kind of where we start to bridge into that. So Matthew and I go to the same church. And from 2022 to 2024, I work at PeopleShare. And PeopleShare is a staffing company. And Matt, this is where we're going to kind of like begin to get a little bit of insight from you. But obviously, you know, like we knew each other, but you being a professional firefighter and me being in staffing, right, with no real extra degree of specificity, right? You just kind of like knew me as a staffing guy. So tell us a little bit more about all that.
So, like you said, it's all about the connections. So we had been in these small groups together. We had spent some time together and knew about each other, and we had fostered this relationship through 2 years, and come to the point that I had decided that I was going to start this franchise. Always looking for opportunities to grow and improve on the business side, and this was an opportunity that had presented itself. So I had started the business, and I had hired 3 guys to work for me, and the business took off to a point that I was like, I need more people, and I need good people that'll work. So my wife and I had talked about it at home, and she was like, why don't you ask people at church if they know of anybody that's looking for a job? She's like, we've got plenty of college kids. We've got high schoolers. They can work during the summer, just whoever might be available. And I believe that was on a Friday or a Saturday, and we came to church on Sunday, and we had seen you, Mick, and your family coming into church, and Allie looked at me and said, hey, why don't you touch base with Mick? So after the service, came up to you and said, hey, Mick, I'm looking for people that want to work. If you know of anybody, let me know. And I do believe that's where the conversation ended for that moment. And it wasn't until later that afternoon you had given me a call.
Yeah. Well, we'll hold on that call for a second. So let's just kind of describe a little bit more in terms of how this interaction goes between you and I, because I think it's really important. So thank you for the lead up on all of that. That was absolutely wonderful, and even a little of additional context that I wasn't aware of. So as I kind of recall it, and there's so many people beyond just the four of us that can relate to this, where you're in a large group setting, whether it's a professional setting or it's a casual setting or it's a church setting, where you see people that you know and you give them like sort of like the look, like, hey, I kind of acknowledge you, you know what I mean? And because you and I were buddies for years, there'd be plenty of times where I'm completely consumed by my kids and you're the same thing, you know what I mean? And you're talking to somebody or I'm talking to somebody and it's just sort of like a, hey, you know, see you, but good to go, right? But you gave me this look. This look was like, I need to talk to you. And I was just totally jammed up. So like I went the way that I went. I certainly wasn't ignoring you, but like it just sort of like situationally played out in that we kind of went our separate ways, at least momentarily. And then you kind of like sought me out, like you came up to me in a different part of church. And the conversation went very similar to what you were talking about. You're like, hey, I'm having trouble hiring people. Can you like make any recommendations? And if you know anybody, right? And I remember saying to you, I was like, hey, I'm not in staffing anymore. And because I wasn't at that point, I had left the staffing world as of May of 2024. So I'd now been out of staffing for a while. And I also even said like, hey, even when I was in staffing, I sold staffing services, but I never did any recruiting. So I'm like, dude, I love you. I'm sorry about how challenging this is. I don't really know. Maybe try like an online recruiting platform or something. And you were kind of like, okay. I don't know if you want to add anything else.
That's
there,
about
you know
how it
went. But I didn't give you much. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I was able to do some research and determine the actual day that you and I had that conversation, Matthew. And it's September 15th of 2024. And so we're recording this conversation in late 2025. So it's more than a year ago. But the reason I'm actually specifically aware of that date is because it was the date of a birthday party. And here's how some more of the connection begins. So Ryan's brother is a guy named Eric. Well, Eric and his wife, they have a couple of kiddos. Their kiddos, my kiddos, all end up going to the same preschool. And so we became friends through our children ultimately. And Ryan's brother invites me and my family over for their son's 5th birthday party. And Ryan is at the birthday party. And so I go up to Ryan, hey, bud, how's it going? Like, good to see you. And we start chatting. Ryan, do you remember this conversation?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it from your perspective. I certainly have mine, but let's hear it from your perspective.
Well, I don't know that we had met before that party, had we?
I think we did. Maybe it's just because your brother had always told me so much cool stuff about you that I was like, okay, I felt like I just knew you, but we may not have actually met. Truthfully.
Yeah, I don't think we did because I was wearing a pair of loopholed sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
And you came up to me and you said, I've seen those sunglasses before. And I was like, that's kind of weird because I don't know this guy. Why has he seen my sunglasses? And I was like, oh, yeah. And you were like, yeah, that's how I met your brother. I had seen him wearing those sunglasses. I guess it was at church or something. He was wearing my sunglasses. And you came up and you saw the loophole, which is a pretty clear indicator somebody's shooting guns.
Yep.
So I think that's how you and Eric kind of, buddied up. And
in fact, it was at a birthday party. It was at another kid from preschool birthday party. I noticed that Eric was wearing a pair of loopholed sunglasses. And to your point, that's a very distinct brand. Somebody's wearing a pair of Ray-Bans. they could be doing a lot of things. You know what I mean? Somebody's wearing a pair of Oakleys. They probably have a lot of different interests. Somebody wears a pair of Leupold sunglasses, pretty much indicates that they like to shoot. So I noticed that, and that's how Eric and I started to have some conversations, and how we ultimately became friends over some period of many months prior to that particular birthday party. To pick back up where you were.
Yeah, no. So we just sat down and I kind of gave you like my story about what I'd been going through in like my work history. I'd spent 16, 17 years doing like construction management and civil engineering work. But some stuff happened and I was just looking for any work at that point. I just needed to pay bills really. And you were like, well, there's this guy at work who just needs guys. He was like, he just needs guys that are responsible, that can do a good job. And, I'll give him a shout and see what happens. So it was like a week later or less, I get a call from Matt. And I think my first job was also in September down in Damascus, Virginia, after that hurricane. So it was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that. I want to also add a little bit of color. So I sat down next to you just to chat, man. And I remember us having a great conversation, and you were describing all of what you were just sort of talking about a little bit there. And I remember asking you the question, so what's next for you? And your response was, I'm looking for work. And I said, oh, okay. Like, what kind of work? And I remember you saying, man, I'll basically take anything. And I even heard you say, or remember you saying, I mean, I don't really want to go be a barista, but if I need to be a barista and make $15 an hour, I'll go be a barista. And I was like, all right. That was like, those kind of words mattered, because that signaled to me that you were genuinely looking for any kind of work. And just so that everybody is clear here, the conversation that Matthew and I have, where I give him a giant, I got nothing for you, buddy, is literally the same exact day that Ryan and I are sitting down at the birthday party. So there's maybe 3 hours worth of elapsed time in between me telling Comby, I got nothing, and me sitting next to you at the birthday party. So I ended up saying to you, and you were kind of talking about this as well, I ended up saying, I was like, okay, I got a buddy, and I'm going to make a call after this birthday party. So that's exactly what I did. And Comby, I called you, Matthew, I called you, and I was like, actually, I texted you to give you a heads up. And I was like, I need to talk to you today. Can you give me 5 minutes? And we ended up speaking, and I told you, what I knew in terms of, Ryan's backstory and all of that type of stuff. And it was, to my delight, just amazing how you handled all of that. So do you recall that conversation that you and I had?
So you had called or we had touched base, and you had told me that you had run into someone that you thought might be a fit for us, but you weren't sure. You had told me that the individual you had talked to had some struggles in the past, and it was no skin off your back if it didn't work out, but you were just throwing it out there because you knew I was looking for people. I vividly remember that my response to you was, well, show me somebody that hasn't had any struggles. I've had struggles in my past as well, and I'm willing to give anybody a shot to do anything that we need help with. Firm believer that everybody deserves a second chance regardless of what it is. And so I told you, I said, I'll give them a call now and give them a shot. I don't mind. Doesn't matter what it is. We can work through it as long as we're open and honest with each other.
Man, thanks, Matt, because that's pretty much exactly how it went from my recollection. And I remember you saying, I'd be glad to have that conversation with him. So I hung up, we hung up, And Ryan, I texted you like, I'm calling you. And then I called you and I was like, dude, here's the deal. Here's what he does. Here's what he knows. Like, I'm super glad to have been involved in this, but this is totally your thing. Like, go have the conversation with him. And Brian, do you want to talk a little bit about how that conversation with Matthew went?
Yeah. So, well, first I was having issues, like struggles with alcohol. I just want to tell everybody knows, like, I didn't kill anyone, and it wasn't like that kind of second chance. But yeah. So Matt called, and I was like, again, my background is very technical, extremely technical. So I remember Matt calling, and I had all these questions. I'm like, because I really didn't know what it was that he was doing yet, and I was like, look, man, do I need to like shave my beard for like PPE? Do I need to wear a respirator? Like, what are we doing and stuff? And Matt's, just about as laid back as it gets. He's like, no, man, just whatever you want. You can wear shorts to work. You can keep your beard, all of this. But like in my mind, like I'm always like thinking about 5 steps ahead of, where we are. So I started asking Matt all these questions, and I was like, look, I can't drive. I'm not going to be able to drive for a long time. Even when I can legally drive, it's still going to be longer. And I live in the city, and that's pretty far from Hanover. And I had never in my life had someone just go, yeah, that's no problem. We'll just come get you. Like, cause my biggest thought looking for work, in the situation I'm in was, I can't drive, and, you need a certain amount of money to pay bills. So how am I going to get a job that pays enough that I can afford an Uber to and from every day and still bring home a decent amount of money? Because that's the kind of situation that I'm in. It's like $15 an hour is okay, but if you got to spend $40 a day on an Uber, it kind of wipes out all your net income. So having Matt just go, that's no issue, man. We'll have somebody come get you. I was like, this is the best. I mean, and the hours, I told him too, I was like, look, I can work. At the time, I could only work during the day. I couldn't do overnights, just for where I'm living currently. But that changed quickly, and they were like, "Dude, you got a job. You can go work whenever." So yeah, it's turned out to be about the perfect fit for me. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's just
100%, man, 100%.
So just to touch back on that phone call with Ryan, it was one of those that from a previous life that I had where I worked in law enforcement, I told him, I was like, I don't need you to tell me everything. I get it. We're going to take care of you, and let's do this. And at some point to that conversation, just like Ryan just said, it was almost like he was trying to throw curveballs out there to give me a reason not to say yes. But it wasn't going to work. So we kept pushing forward. And so Ryan started with us. I believe he was the first one that I hired within the company that did not have a public safety first responder background. So I called our operations guy and I was like, hey, I've hired this guy. We're going to see how it works out. Here's the deal. You're going to go pick him up every morning. And that's what it is. And so Ryan came on the first job, like he said, I believe it was down in Damascus, Virginia, where we had gone down after the hurricane to help clean some gear for the fire department down there. I didn't go down the first day because of other work obligations, but the first phone call I got from our operations guy was, hey man, I don't know where you found him, but he works hard and he hasn't complained and he's going to fit well with us. So that's where it went. Ryan has performed well within our company, and is one of the guys that we lean on now with almost every job that we have because of his willingness to show up, his willingness to work, and just to be there for us. So he's a very important asset that we have. So it has worked out well and gone better than ever imagined.
Wow. Praise God, man. So cool. Well, guys, man, I think we've completed the story arc here. And I just get so pumped listening to this. I mean, I'm looking at Butch, your smile, and I mean, it's super, super, super neat. So we're going to land the plane, guys, with the questions that we ask all of our guests. And they're twofold. The first of which is, was it coincidence or God? And I'll be responding with all of these. But I want to lay some of these things out because it also serves as a bit of a recap for a lot of what we've talked about. So the first scenario is that Butch has absolutely no idea that I'm looking for work and suggests a job that ends up being quite literally like an amazing position that I legitimately really, really loved being in that role and working for the wonderful woman that I worked for at People Share. Like that was just absolutely awesome and completely out of the blue. And then Matt, you and I end up in small group, right? I'm the quote unquote staffing guy. And then you come up to me on a particular Sunday morning, September 15th, 2024, and kind of seek me out. And then that just so happens to be the exact date of the birthday party. But months before all of that, Ryan's brother is wearing Ryan's sunglasses, not his own sunglasses, at a birthday party that he and I both happened to be at. So there's a lot of potential coincidences here. And, well, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. So I'm going to answer the question first, okay? And then each of you will go around. So Butch, then Matt, and then Ryan. And guys, answer it genuinely, please, whatever you believe it to be. But I look at all of those things, and for me, there's absolutely no way that was coincidental. That is 100% God. I think every bit of those pieces got moved around on purpose by God, and I'm blown away by all of that. So, Butch, give us your genuine response to coincidence or God.
So, Mac, I'm not a big fan of coincidences. I truly believe this was fully God's alignment. You know, being open to an opportunity to serve and try to help others really just shows the alignment in how God can use all of us for just changing the lives or helping the lives of others. So I don't believe at all it was coincidence.
Yeah, thanks. Ryan, coincidence or God, man? And fire away with any and all, dude. Space for any answer here.
No, I mean, I'm admittedly not the most religious person. I do believe in a higher power. And since I've started to change things about myself and the way that I act and react over the last few years, I'm starting to see things a little differently. Like I'm starting to see things just kind of work themselves out. And there was a lot of stress for me, looking for work and with the things that had happened. So I had spent a lot of time just kind of crapping on myself, just thinking like this is, nothing's going to work out. Like Matt had said, when I talked to him, I was throwing curveballs because in my head, I'm like, look, I'm down in the dumps. Nothing's working out. Here's what's going on. If you want to hire me, whatever, I'm not going to work out. Just crapping on myself. But since I've, started to make some changes in my personal life and like I said, the way I act and react, things do work out. So coincidence or God, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can tell you if you start, looking in yourself and making the right changes, things seem to happen outside as well.
Yeah. Dude, thanks for the transparency there, man. Really appreciate the genuine response. Matt, coincidence or God?
Definitely a God thing. I would say that if it was one of these instances that took place, I would probably have to go with coincidence. However, the totality of all of them occurring to put all those pieces in place was definitely a God thing with his hand on it to make sure that all of it happened the way he wanted it to.
Guys, thank you all for your response to that. We're going to start with Butch here on our final question. And that is, how has your life changed as a result of all the stuff we've talked about today?
Well, I won't say that it's changed. I say it's been enhanced. It's a reminder that it's important to put God first, to make yourself available to others, to seek opportunities where you can help others, and you can actually see the outcome here today. And so I think it's just validation, Mick, as much as anything, how important the connectivities are among people.
Yeah. Thanks, Butch. Matt, what about you? How has life changed?
The biggest change would be that I'm seeing more success within every aspect of what we're doing, whether it's in my personal life or with the business, or with the career that I chose many years ago to be a firefighter. Just seeing that the connections that you make are truly there for a reason, whether you see it immediately or if it is sometime down the road, those people are put in your life for a reason. Sometimes we won't ever know the reason, but sometimes we get to have opportunities like this that you see why people are there.
Yeah. Man, thanks for sharing. Ryan, how has life changed for you?
I mean, it's nice to have, like, for me, like a sort of purpose at work, just to have something to look forward to. I was really worried that I was going to be a barista, you know. That's not really what I'm looking for. So it's nice to like have a group of guys that I can really talk to and enjoy working with. And really, I mean, the opportunity at Redline's kind of been a perfect fit for me, because I still get to see my family, which is the most important thing for me. And yeah, it's just been a blessing overall.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. Well, the same question comes to me. How has my life changed? On the whole, it's really helped me to see that God is literally in all things. So, like, what I mean by that is we outlined all of these little pieces, but like, I mean, I look at how each of those little things happen, like even to the tune of Ryan's brother wearing Ryan's sunglasses, not his own sunglasses. If he's not wearing those sunglasses, I'm not going up to him. I'm just not. And that conversation, and then all the other things that we've outlined that swirl around, that we, in most instances, like Matthew, you were talking about this, like it's so incredibly rare that we get to see the pieces come together. And that's why I was so excited for all four of us to be in this conversation. Like, this is the full arc. I mean, Ryan, the fact that you're on here, dude, is amazing to be able to have everybody that was involved in this. And so for me, I am encouraged by what I experienced in all of this, which is for me, the particular learning or the lesson or whatever is that, man, God is in all things. Because even the stuff that I don't even think he would be in, I could very much be a part of, or any one of us could be a part of. And to Matthew's point, like, we may never know, but I'm kind of learning, like, there's a good chance he's using us at any given time and we're just never going to know about it. And yet we get these really neat little glimmers of, hey, I'm gonna show you guys the full thing now, So it's just been massive encouragement to me to go, okay, God's in this. I got to keep on loving him because he clearly loves me and he loves others. So, guys, really appreciate all of you boys being on here. Ryan, thank you for sharing transparently about the challenges with alcoholism and what that created for you and how things have really begun to work themselves in a positive direction. Matt, thanks for saying yes. Butch, thanks for being you, man, and bringing stuff up that on the surface wouldn't have made a lot of sense, and you did it anyway. So it's been a real pleasure, guys. Thank you each for being on When You Look and telling your parts of this great story.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Was it coincidence or God? You decide for yourself, but I believe you just heard a story for His glory. When You Look is powered by stories just like this, and yours could be next. Go to whenyoulook.com/be-a-guest or use the link in the description below. Drop us a comment and share this episode with somebody that needs it. Until next time, thanks a bunch for listening and watching, and God bless.